If you're on the anxiety recovery journey, whether you're overcoming intense physical symptoms, if you're experiencing depersonalization, derealization, oftentimes what that gets associated with is intrusive thoughts. You might be getting scary thoughts. What if this is my life forever? What if I never get out of this? What if this is something else and the doctors might have missed something? And you might be having these thoughts nonstop. No matter what you do, these thoughts won't go away. It's almost like these thoughts have a stickiness where anytime a thought comes in that's related to your anxiety or your anxiety symptoms, the brain just latches onto it. And so a lot of people think that the way around this is to ignore their thoughts. Well, in this video, I want to share with you, does ignoring work? And really, what are the nuances here? Because the truth is that yes, there is some truth in ignoring your thoughts where you might experience the thoughts end up going away. However, I don't recommend this to be the best solution. And instead, I'll show you exactly what you can do so that you can learn how to respond to these thoughts. And as a consequence, the thoughts end up going away long term. So let's get it started. So if you're new to the channel, I'm not going to be talking about the mechanics of anxiety, why anxiety creates certain symptoms, how to identify which symptom is anxiety, which one's not. If you want to know, I have playlists on this channel. I also have a desensitization blueprint that really breaks down what are the mechanics of recovery, how to respond, how to go back to living, how to develop your core confidence, and really break through any barriers that you have. It's a great place to start, assuming you've gotten everything ruled out by your doctors. But in this video, I'm going to be talking more about the thoughts, because when people are going through the recovery journey, they have a period where they recognize that a lot of the issues that are being caused are the thoughts. You might be having scary, intrusive thoughts of, what if this is gonna be my life forever? What if I don't get out of this? Oh no, it's back. That means I'm gonna be stuck in this forever. You might have fallen into the cycle because you might have had thoughts of certain sensations or symptoms that you're having that are really intense. And yet every time you go to your doctors, they're saying everything is fine. And so you'll naturally think, did the doctors miss something? Do I have something else? Is this gonna be one of those undiagnosable things that I'm gonna have to live with forever? You might be having panic attacks in certain situations, and you might have decided to avoid those situations. So you'll start getting thoughts of, what happens if I get a panic attack here? How do I respond to that? Well, before I break down, does ignoring your thoughts truly help? And really the nuance is there. It's important to understand how thoughts influence and play a part in anxiety. See, when you're experiencing physical symptoms, when you're getting those intrusive thoughts I mentioned, the depersonalization, derealization, the weird emotions, your nervous system has become sensitized. Basically, you've had a stressful situation, or you have had what we call, you've hit a stress threshold where your body and mind can only take so much. And what happens during this time is you often experience a panic attack. Most people experience a panic attack. Not all the time, but majority of the people that I work with, they typically fell in the cycle by having a panic attack. Now, once they have a panic attack, their nervous system becomes more sensitive. It wants to be more sensitive in case there's threats. Basically, your nervous system has said, there is a threat, Shaan is in danger, we don't know what it is, but we're gonna be more attuned to looking for these threats. So as a consequence, your nervous system becomes more sensitive. It starts looking for threats. Now, one of the things your body and brain does to protect you from danger is by coming up with a lot of what if scenarios. Your brain starts doing this cost benefit analysis of everything just to make sure that there is no threat. Historically, if we were in danger, one of the reasons why we would get caught by, let's say, a saber-toothed tiger or whatever it is because we weren't able to think through different scenarios. So your brain has came up with a response of coming up with what if scenarios. What happens if the bush or a tree shakes a little bit? Is it because of the wind, or is it because there's a saber-toothed tiger behind it? Let's just be on a little bit more high alert and assume that there's a saber-toothed tiger behind it. Now, why am I telling you all this? Well, when you're in a sensitized state, when you're experiencing these intense symptoms, Well, one of the things your brain does is that it looks at everything through a negative bias. It assumes there's something out to get you. So even though you might be looking at something and someone else might be seeing the same thing, you will look at the negatives. This isn't necessarily you doing it, it's your anxiety doing it because there is a survival advantage to doing this. This is why you might be having existential anxiety. What's the meaning of life? You might be having scary intrusive thoughts of what if this is my life forever? And these kind of thoughts really affect you because you're looking at it through the prism of a sensitized nervous system. So these thoughts have a much stronger weight on you. Your body will react more just intensely because of that. So what do? Well, when you go through the recovery journey, it's important to understand that you throw all your symptoms, once you've gotten everything ruled out by your doctor, of course, by throwing all the symptoms under the anxiety umbrella. Throwing your physical symptoms under the anxiety umbrella is cool, but what ends up happening is that you have to throw these thoughts, these what if thoughts, also under the anxiety umbrella. A simplified way of looking at this is really thinking about your body's producing excess adrenaline because you're in this fight or flight response. And a lot of times the sensations and symptoms you're experiencing is because of this heightened adrenaline, this heightened cortisol. But what's a consequence of heightened adrenaline is also a lot of thoughts. So you almost have to label the thoughts too as anxiety. This is very interesting for anxiety sufferers because for the first time you have to disconnect from your thought, meaning you have to become aware of the fact that you're not actually your thoughts. Your thoughts is a byproduct of your nervous system being sensitized. So you almost have to create a little bit of a space between you and your thoughts. And by the way, this is where mindfulness becomes so important, right? Where you start recognizing that you are not your thoughts and you observe your thoughts, and what that does as a consequence is that gives you a little bit of space. So basically your anxiety umbrella gets bigger. It's not just the physical symptoms, it's not the depersonalization, derealization, but it's also the intrusive thoughts that come with it. Now that we've done a little bit of a recap on intrusive thoughts and how to look at it in terms of anxiety recovery, the question is, what happens when you get that thought? Whatever that thought is to you, maybe it's you feel like you're going to be in this forever. Maybe it's a physical symptom. Maybe it's a panic attack. Maybe it's the DPDR. Whatever thoughts you're dealing with, well, how do you respond to that? A lot of people think you should be ignoring the thought. So when a thought comes up, just ignore it. Now I want to ask you, should you be ignoring a thought that comes up? Well, if you're going through the recovery journey, you'll start to understand that a lot of the reasons why your symptoms are staying alive is because you're resisting the feelings, the sensations, the symptom, the thought from surfacing up. So basically, people are always trying to repress it. They're trying to avoid it because it's uncomfortable. They're always searching for short-term comfort or coping skills to feel better in the moment. However, you will learn that this actually reinforces the cycle. This makes the anxiety stronger. So with that said, the question comes back, when you have a thought, how do you respond to it? Do you just ignore it? Well, I want to preface by saying that certain times ignoring has actually helped. I've had a lot of clients throughout the years that basically told me, hey, Shaan, I was struggling with this years ago and I just managed to come out of it, but I'm falling back into the cycle. I don't know what I did to get myself out. And so I would try to dig deep. I said, well, what did you do to get yourself out of the cycle? Well, I just got busy with things and I just went back to living, and I'm trying to do the same thing here, but it doesn't work. So what ended up happening? Well, technically they ignored their thoughts, they ignored maybe even their feelings, their sensations, their symptoms, and it ended up going away. But is that the way to ultimate freedom? To me, ultimate freedom is not only just coming out of this, but making sure you never fall back into the cycle. Well, here's the thing. Ignoring can work, but it's not the best solution. Basically, when you're ignoring a thought, let's say a thought comes up, you are still reacting to the thought. You have a thought pop up and then you purposefully do something else so you get your mind off of it. And while that can be helpful, you're crossing a very fine line of at what point are you just ignoring a thought and when are you just reacting to a thought. Let's say hypothetically, anytime I get a thought, one way of ignoring it is to do jumping jacks. When I do jumping jacks, I think about something else and I forget about the thought. This is just a hypothetical, by the way. Well, that might be helpful in certain situations, but what happens when you're sitting down in a classroom or you're at work in a work meeting and that thought comes up? You just can't get up and do jumping jacks. And more importantly, what happens if a thought comes up, you do jumping jacks and the thought is still there? Are you just going to end up doing more jumping jacks? Are you going to try to do something else to ignore the thought? At a certain point, you're not just ignoring a thought, but you're running away from the thought. This is why I feel like ignoring your thoughts, ignoring your sensations alone won't be enough. You fall into this territory very quickly where it's not just about ignoring anymore, but now it's about avoiding. So what do you do instead? How do you ignore? Well, one of the first things I always tell people in the mentorship as we're guiding them through the recovery journey is acknowledge what's happening. If you're getting an intrusive thought, acknowledge it. If you're experiencing an intense symptom, acknowledge it. If you're experiencing depersonalization, derealization, acknowledge it. Call out the elephant in the room. This symptom is here, this sensation is here, this thought is here, that's okay. Once you acknowledge that it's there, then accept that it's there and then throw it under the anxiety umbrella. You don't need to figure it out. You don't need to fight with it. You don't even need to be logical with it. You basically just don't need to engage with it. And when you realize you don't need to engage with it, then a simple way of recognizing if you're ignoring it or not is just by asking yourself, what would I be doing if I didn't have this thought? Or better yet, what would I just be doing in general if I just had to do whatever I need to do? Maybe that's going to the grocery store. Maybe that's hanging out with your kids. Maybe that's making travel plans. Maybe that's going on the vacation. Maybe that's going to work. Maybe that's hanging out with friends. Whatever that is, what would you be doing anyway? Go ahead and do that. You don't need to engage. You don't need to ignore. You don't need to fight. Acknowledge the thought is there. Recognize that the only thing you need to do is do nothing about it and move on. And what you will find over time is that the thought dissipates on its own. So many people think that they need to do something, combat the thought to make the thought go away. People start saying, well, if I have a negative thought, combat it with a positive thought. At a certain point, it just turns into this war where it's just constantly reacting to every thought, trying to negate it, making it seem like if you have a negative thought and a positive thought, it neutralizes it. But going back to ignoring the thoughts, what happens is that when people ignore the thoughts, they don't do the first couple of steps of acknowledging the thought is there and recognizing they don't need to do anything. They jump right into step 3, which is going back to living. They almost go back to living as a reaction to the thought being there. Rather than just taking some time and saying, hey, look, the thought's here, that's okay, it's totally fine, there's nothing I need to do, it's just part of anxiety, move on. They go straight into the move on. And then what ends up happening at that point is that it's very easy for it to become avoidance. This is exactly what happens when people distract themselves too. It's basically the same concept. So as you're going through the recovery journey, a good practice is first checking out that blueprint, because I think it'll be a great place to start, but also recognizing that before you go back to living, just whenever a symptom pops up or the sensation or the feeling pops up, recognize it, acknowledge it, and then throw it under the anxiety umbrella and then move forward. It sounds incredibly simple, but it makes a world of difference. These small corrections as we help people in the mentorship makes people break through setbacks, makes people really understand the principles of recovery, and it just makes them go back to living. And it's kind of ridiculous that how small shifts in these things make such a profound difference. And this is why I always say find somebody that understands what you're going through, that has helped people around the world, and have them guide you through the recovery journey. Figuring it out yourself can take you so far, but you might have a point where you hit basically a ceiling where you might have certain blind spots that you're not aware of. The other great part of having a guide take you through the journey is that it collapses time to a lot of time, energy, effort that it takes for you to try to figure out where it's going wrong. You're able to negate that really quickly and move forward. So having a guide, having a mentor is very, very helpful. So I would challenge you, have somebody guide you through the journey, whether that's someone in your community, whether it's somebody that you truly trust. If you want that to be the mentorship, you can click the link down below and apply for mentorship. Basically having a guide you through the recovery journey just to make sure you're doing things right. Recognize that you are in the driver's seat, okay? Recognize that your recovery of overcoming this, going back to living, is 100% in your hands. The guide is what it is. It's a guide. It's there to help you on the journey. But recognize that recovery comes from within. It's not a matter of luck. It's just a matter of implementing the right things at the right time, learning the skills, and then making sure this is all part of the past. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one.